Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Delivery Fellowship. My name is Alex, and I'm serving as your chairperson for tonight's event. The Delivery Fellowship is a community of designers, developers, and product professionals who come to network, learn, and grow so that together we may elevate our craft and turn ideas into outcomes. The only requirement to join our fellowship is the desire to grow with others who want to lead through their work. Tonight's event is focused on how to build product vision and roadmaps that work. We're grateful you are here with us. This is more than just an event. It's a chance to step out of your day-to-day, connect with peers, and walk away with ideas we can apply immediately. On the back of everyone's lanyard, on your name tag, there's a QR code. And so when you scan it, it's going to take you to this website, this app called Slido. And so you'll be able to submit questions during the presentations. And so during each of the speakers, I would suggest, if a question comes on up, scan the QR code, and then there's going to be a tab for Q&A. Go there, submit your question, and then you can upvote certain questions. You can downvote certain questions as well, too. And so whatever questions get prioritized, we'll be able to go over those after each of the speakers. So highly recommend to engage with that. And so speaking with engagement, and so one thing that's been very important to me when it comes to meetups or the sense of community is the communal aspect of these things, is to connect with others. And sometimes it's very difficult to connect with others. I know with me being very much an introvert, making connections, saying hello or whatever, it can be kind of a tricky thing to do. And so one thing we're actually going to do before we get started tonight is to do a small little activity. And so we're going to force some of those connections. Well, not force it, we'll encourage it. And so, in addition to the QR code on the back of your lanyards, there is going to be a color code. On 6 of the tables here, that respective color code is there. We see yellow, pink, green, purple, orange, red. And so whatever's on the back of your lanyard, that is going to be your small group, or your breakout group, your small group. And so for this first group, for the next 10 minutes, we're going to do a quick little icebreaker. So very simple, just introduce yourself, your name, where do you work, or if you're a student, what do you study, where do you study, and then share your why this topic of product vision and roadmap planning stands out to you and what brought you here tonight. And so we actually have it on the slide here as well. And so with that, feel free to get on up, find your respective group, and engage for the next 10 minutes. So we'll be back. All right, we are at time. So I hope that was enjoyable. Honestly, for me, I was like, oh, we're just gonna do a little icebreaker, whatever's gonna happen. Maybe it'll just be like whatever. I honestly enjoyed that. Didn't know what the background of some of the people in Green Group, which y'all came from, and to learn some of our stories, where we work and what brought us here. So I found that very enjoyable. I hope you did too. All right, so moving on. I'm going to give a quick shout out to some of the people here that helped make this possible. Some of our sponsors and our partners. All right, so our first partner for tonight, Invisia. And so Invisia is a Chicago technology consulting and software development firm. They work with organizations to solve product and engineering challenges to help teams move ideas into delivery. And one thing Invisia is offering, and so there are 2 poster boards here with QR codes, and Invisia is offering a free 1-hour workshop to our attendees here at the Delivery Fellowship. And so where you bring a real problem from your team, and they will work through it with you in a structured session. On both sides of the room, you will see the banners, which I just mentioned. And so, yeah, if you scan the QR code, you fill out the form, and you can request the workshop. Our second partner is the Institute of Design, our lovely venue. And so we are very grateful for their support and for opening the space into the fellowship. And so the Institute of Design has a long history of advancing design education and shaping learning leaders across industry. And so at this time, I would like to invite Inijo, the Dean of the Institute of Design, to share a few words and to tell us more about their work here.
All right, so welcome to the Institute of Design at the Illinois Institute of Technology. We're very happy to host you. You know, Alex has been hanging around. He almost feels like a team member now. I see him every once in a while, sort of in events and talking to our faculty and staff and all that. It's really a great pleasure to have you guys here. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about IIT and ID. So for those of you who don't know about Illinois Institute of Technology, we are a 130-plus-year-old university that was founded with the mission of providing access. So most of our graduates are first-generation university goers, and the university was built to help provide university education to factory workers and the children of factory workers and meat packers, right? So the Institute of Design is a graduate school within Illinois Tech. We are actually the only school in the United States that's completely to graduate design education. We were founded in 1937. We are an 88-year-old school, and our founding principles, we come from the tradition. For those of you who are designers, you may know about the Bauhaus. So the Bauhaus in Germany moved to the US. So Laszlo Moholy-Nagy established the Institute of Design in Chicago, and Mies van der Rohe established the College of Architecture here. He was the dean of the College of Architecture here at IIT. So what you're sitting in is the home of the American Bauhaus. And if you walk around the campus, not today, in the morning, you will see that we are the largest concentration of Mies van der Rohe buildings in the world. So if you walk that way, you'll see Crown Hall, which is Mies' crowning jewel. But why this is important to all of this conversation is the Institute of Design over the last 88 years has established many of the things that designers have started to take for common. In the 1950s, we were pioneers in systems design, and in the 1990s, we worked with a small consultancy here in Chicago called IDEO to build design thinking. So design thinking started at the Institute of Design, not in this building, this was built in 2017, but in another building in the 1990s. Today, we are, like I said, a graduate school, and we focus on design-driven leadership. We believe that design has a role to play in all leadership because as we get into more complex problem solving, you cannot have just analytical mentality going into the room. You need to have a synthetic mentality. You need to have human empathy. You need to be able to prototype and solve and iterate and experiment, right? So that building block of design that is so crucial to the optimism that our field brings to the world, we believe can be transferred to leadership also. So check out our programs. We have several people here. Leslie and Peter are going to be here throughout the evening. And Peter's going to say some things at the end also. I think so. But he's here to help guide you. And check out our degree programs. Be part of the community. And I'm sure we will do more of these events. So welcome again to the Institute of Design and IIT. Thank you.
So with that, we're now going to start and dive into our first speaker for the evening. So David here is a senior manager at United Airlines, where he leads design strategy and innovation for United's digital travel experiences. Before joining United, David served as the head of design for Capital One's CreditWise, where he helped scale product vision to reach more than 67 million users. So with that, please help me welcome David.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Hi. Cool. I was telling Alex that this is actually my first talk, so everyone be nice. All right? All right, so we're going to talk about building product vision. But before we get into that, I want to kind of introduce myself. Who am I? I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have a 5-year-old kid. He's my biggest why right now. Everything kind of revolves around him. And my wife is probably one of the smartest people I know. She's a neuromuscular physician. And when I'm not working, that's kind of what I focus on, right? It's always about the family. We love to travel. I love cooking. That's my biggest therapy. I've actually telling my wife that I actually want to write my own cookbook one day. She says don't, but because she's like gonna spend too much time writing a book. I'd rather you just be in the kitchen and cook. So, but yeah, I've always kind of spent my time in the intersection of product, tech, design, strategy. I've been designing for the past 17 years. I started off in an agency, moved into in-house because I wanted to make more product impact, and I feel like when I work in an agency, all you do is just advertise features instead of actually shape the product. A little bit about my journey. As Alex mentioned, currently I'm leading the design team at United Airlines, really focusing on kind of transforming and reshaping the way people purchase their airline tickets, the way they actually go through the booking flow, and how do they experience the day of travel. And before that, I was at Capital One, where I was head of design for CreditWise, kind of helped transform a very basic credit monitoring tool to what we call Credit Wellness Copilot. And before that, again, with Capital One, I was kind of leading the team around the co-brand and the card and bank acquisition. So, that being said, we'll get into today's topic. Building product vision for complex organizations. It's actually funny because I'm currently leading 2 sets of experience visions or product visions at United. One is for Mileage Plus and the other one is for the co-brand product. One thing I've learned, and I've had this like aha moment, where when you say product vision, certain disciplines get a little bit overprotected. That's just the politics of any big company. So I decided to switch that to experience vision. So we're going to talk about experience vision instead of product vision, because as designers, that is kind of what we do. We champion for the experience, we champion for the customer. We are the kind of the shepherds of the experience, if you will. So I'm just going to ask a question to the crowd. What is experience vision to you? Anyone? When you hear experience vision, what do you think?
Well, related to jobs to be done for key constituencies.
Okay. Anyone else?
How do you want the product to make the user feel when they use it?
Okay. Anyone else?
What problems do you hope this solves? Where do you hope this takes your business? Like, what is the, maybe not destination, but route
Yeah.
you're trying to walk?
Yeah. Close. I think the biggest thing is that the experience vision, or call it a product vision, it's really something that describes your ideal future state through the lens of the customer's point of view, right? It is that shared vision that will help guide and define your strategy and deliverables. And I want to kind of point to the shared future state. Shared because as an organization, everyone needs to rally around that shared vision. And it's meant to be future state because if it's too near term, that's an MVP, that's something that you can build today. Point of a future state is something that, as a North Star, you point your finger and say, that is where we should go. We may not have the technology or the means to get there today, but we know that that's the right thing to build. So it's meant to be intentionally future state. What experience vision is not, it's not some sort of a corporate statement, it's not a roadmap, it's not a set of or a list of features that you need to go execute or requirements that are handed over to teams to go deliver on. And that's really important to kind of differentiate between the two. All right, so we all know mercenaries and missionaries. And most companies tend to fall under the culture of mercenaries, right? There are teams that are being given specific requirements and those teams go and execute the work. And there's missionaries. They're the teams that want the vision, they want to understand what the problem that needs to go solved, and they take the problem and they solve it autonomously. As a team, they co-create, right? They start with understanding what the problem is and they get to the solution. And you can actually understand where you follow or where your company follows based on how you measure success. If you're a company that is measuring success through, how many features we launched or the velocity in deployment, you may fall under the mercenaries, right? Because you tend to have a culture of requirements-driven kind of results. But if you say, hey, I'm measuring customer engagement or business impact, You may fall under the missionaries, if you will. And that's kind of the mindset that you need to take when you think about strategy, big vision, experiences. So the way I think in terms of experience, vision, stack, upside down pyramid. I like to think that a perfect vision is somewhere around 5 to 7 years. If it's anything bigger than that, it's not really as interesting to stakeholders. And if it's anything less than that, it's too near term, right? So you want to kind of have a defined vision or your North Star, which will then inform your strategy. And once you have defined vision, strategy, then you define your roadmap to work your way towards the validating the vision, if you will. And that's kind of how I always think in terms of how a vision can converge into a roadmap. Big idea, something that you can build, work your way towards that, validating the vision, if you will. So I've been lucky. I've worked in some companies where I've had stakeholders and leaders come up and say, hey guys, we need to define a vision. We don't have it, go do it. But most companies don't do that, right? So you have to look for signals. And if you're looking for signals, here's like 6 that I've been these are the signals that I can always look out for. If you have a lack of direction, or you don't really have any good success metrics or experience metrics, if your shipping requirements don't align to like a larger OKRs or larger goals, if you are stuck in the cycle of executing things from the backlog, and you can't really get past that like an MVP phase 1 phase, or even like if you talk to your stakeholders and ask them, hey, why are we doing this? And the answer is, well, because our competitors are doing it, or because our leadership is passing this down and that we have to execute. Quite frankly, I've had cases where partners just do not know the customers because they're so stuck delivering near-term results, they don't actually talk to the customer. So they don't really understand the customer, right? So those are some of the signals that you can kind of look for. You can create the space to say, hey, we may be lacking a vision. Here are some signals. Let's put a point of view together. That being said, as a designer or whatever your function may be, once you step into that phase of delivering a vision or running a vision exercise, you're gonna have to wear many hats. You're no longer just a designer. You're no longer just a researcher. You become a strategist because you have to think big, but also know how to, focus and think near term. You become a facilitator. One of your core jobs is gonna be bringing people together and extracted wonderful ideas that they have. Organizer. Honestly, this one is really important because, especially in big organizations, you have a lot of stakeholders. And you have to understand who are the right people, who actually impacts your vision, who's gonna help build that vision. So you have to understand and kind of manage that complexity of stakeholders. Communication. You have to become almost like the master communicator, because the way you tell the story can either help build momentum or it's gonna lose momentum for your work. Educator. As a designer, and obviously I'm a designer, so I'm speaking from the designer's point of view, you also have to educate your stakeholders on human-centered design, design thinking, design in general, right? Because most people might not have the in-depth understanding of design, or it might be just their first time working with designers. So take the time to show value of design, and that designers are not just there to make pretty things or execute work, but they can be strategic thought leaders. And then lastly, this one's pretty important. Become a project manager or an admin, right? One of the big things that you'll have to do is bring people together. I'm saying like herd the cats, but yeah, you have to play a lot of calendar Tetris and like schedule meetings and bring people together, because when you are facilitating an entire vision workshop, it's all on you or your teammates, whoever is part of that group. You have to drive the momentum, and one of the things that becomes really challenging is time. So you have to essentially just become an admin. So your role's gonna evolve, your role's gonna change. Oh, one thing I also do wanna call out about this is, once you start leading a vision exercise, your strength become amplified and visible, but also your gaps in strength also become visible quite easily. So it's really important to lean on the core team that you're working with, right? Because the whole point of working on a vision exercise is that it's high pressure, it's really important. Most of the time when you're doing a vision, it's because leadership wants you to do a vision. So all eyes on you. So just something to be mindful of. All right, so I've been lucky that I've got a chance to create a lot of different vision exercises, sprints call it, and I've kind of over time have evolved this into what I call 5-step experience vision sprint. Now the point here is that from the start to finish is that you are able to define a vision, but you're also able to create an MVP, something that you can actually go and build after you've defined the vision. So starts with grounding and aligning. This is really important, getting everybody on the same page, right? Defining success, like what does success of the entire sprint actually look like? What does getting to the done state of the vision look like? Co-creating the future. This is really important because your job is to create the space to facilitate and get ideas from everybody. Chances are that if you're working with stakeholders, those stakeholders are experts. They understand the space and they have amazing ideas. They just haven't been given the space to come up with these ideas, right? Or rather, you can help them generate those ideas. Lastly, well, not lastly, but validating vision. This is also really important because you have to validate the vision. You have to check in with your stakeholders. And if you are not on the right direction, it's not too late to course correct. And lastly, translating your vision into an MVP. No one wants pretty things without something that you can build. If you get to a vision and it's just pie in the sky without any direction of how to build it and make impact to the business, that just becomes design theater. So maybe I'll give a little bit more in depth in terms of each stage. So grounding and aligning, what I like to do there is be really super focused on, like, what does vision actually mean? Because to some people, vision might mean simple statement, it might mean a wireframe, it might mean some sort of report, right? But get really clear with your stakeholders, what is the definition of vision to them? It's also really important to identify why are you doing this? What are the customer needs? What are the business needs? It needs to have a purpose. Is there some research? Can you do research, right? So get the grounding, but also align on the engagement model. How are you gonna work? Who are you gonna work with, right? It's really important. That first phase is what's gonna set you up for success. And I also have some methodologies that I've kind of used. Stakeholder interviews. Those are really, really important. One of the things that I've actually done for defining what vision is to the customer or to the stakeholder, I've sent them surveys where I've had them actually fill out and say, what does a vision or a done state mean to you? And that would give me the output. All right, defining success. This is really, really important because these are the problems that you're trying to also solve, right? What does success look like? What does success look like for the customer and for the business? Get really crisp on what does that look like, because that's gonna ensure alignment and remove any sort of confusion down the road. And obviously there's a ton of different methodologies that you can use, but few things that I do wanna call out is defining your user journeys is really, really important because you wanna get crisp on what kind of customers you have or archetypes. What is their journey? What are the stages that they go through? What are their pain points? And what are some of the opportunities? Because ultimately, you're creating a vision because you're trying to address some pain points. All right, co-creating the future. This is really, really important because this kind of becomes like your job, right? Create the conditions for breakthrough thinking. Whether it's running how might we statement, exercises, design jams, or defining experience principles, you have to create the space where you bring in teams together to generate a ton of ideas. Because you as a designer, it's not just up to you to come up with ideas. Actually, most of the time, it's not really your job to come up with an idea, right? When you're in that context, create the space where you can ask really hard questions to your partners, stakeholders, and get them to respond. They have a ton of ideas. So you never have to feel like you have to lone wolf this moment. This is where it's all about collaboration, co-creation. Validating the vision. One thing that I've learned early on is share your progress with leadership. along the way. Because if they're not aligned, if they don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, you're gonna lose momentum. And that vision literally becomes design theater. Prototype, right? Get really good at getting quick prototypes so they can validate your ideas and make sure that you're showing to your stakeholders that, hey, we're validating our hypothesis, we're moving towards the right direction, right? And it's a great place to, if there's a pivot that's needed, it's not too late. So that way you're not gonna lose momentum. And lastly, convert your vision into an MVP. One thing that I love doing is when I kind of complete the entire vision exercise, I always have a couple of slides that define, like, here's what MVP we can build today that's gonna help us work towards the vision, right? It's few things, few opportunities that are grounded in real user pain points that we can start to execute. And that's a really good way to kind of help translate vision into MVP and start building a roadmap. I want to give an example of one of those visions. So when I was at CreditWise, we defined a vision, we had this like really beautiful pie in the sky idea, and one of the features that we wanted to improve was a simulator. And in our vision state, we wanted to get to like a dynamic feature that leverages machine learning, behavioral insights. It's connected to a credit bureau, so we can understand their behaviors, their spend. Most of them have Capital One credit cards, so we can understand their spend behavior, right? So we can get really good at predicting and actually create a great set of simulations. So if you're a customer that wants to buy a house for a few millions of dollars in a couple of years, you can set a goal for you. It can give you a roadmap for success. We were nowhere near that path when we first started. We just knew that that's where we want to go. So what we did is we backstacked. We're like, all right, we love this idea. Everyone is bought in. What is the first thing that we can do today to start validating and working towards that vision, right? So we created an MVP. It was a first set of the features that we built, which is we're going to give them a recommendation and a possible output and see if they're going to save it as a goal. And it was like small little things. I think one of them that we had was, if I want to, I think it was like it was for the loan, right? If I want to like increase my loan or something like that. But it was one set of tasks that we give to the user just to validate if we're going to be able to get that kind of engagement from the users. We did. We saw a ton of success, so we moved to the next stage. We started to add more tasks and actions for the user and started to build out that entire feature. And what we learned actually by the time we got to the target state is that every user that engaged with this feature was actually, it increased 46% of the re-engagement. So we knew that the features that we were providing were actually bringing the users back to the app, which is a massive success. It was third most used feature before we started. By the time we got to the target state, it became the second most used feature on the entire app. And that's great. So that's kind of like an example of going from a vision, hopefully like backstacking into an MVP, and then continuing and testing your way towards that vision. And one thing I do want to call out is that this vision, once we actually got to the vision, it didn't look exactly the same, right? The purpose is it's illustrative, it's supposed to change. If you ever get to a vision and it looks exactly like that first comp that you designed, it just simply means that you did not test enough and you did not evolve enough, right? But what creates your vision is really a set of those like experience principles, right? And as long as you deliver on that, you've reached the vision. And I would say, lastly, design cannot survive alone, right? We always talk about the three-legged stool. It's not us versus them. And it's really, really important to understand that, in my opinion, design, the function of design is to be the bridge between product and technology, right? So as long as we continue to work together, I think we'll be able to create better results and better visions. So that being said, that is who I am. My name is David. Work at United. I do some vision exercises, and we build products. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't see any questions come in through Slido, but if anybody has any maybe right now, want to chime in? Otherwise, we'll head on to the next speaker. So, awesome.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone.
Go for it.
Your North Star metrics, how did you go about choosing your North Star metrics? And was that already defined or was it defined?
So, good question. I think in general, we didn't have those metrics defined, like specific metrics. What we knew that we wanted to measure was experience metrics, right? We knew that we wanted to improve on re-engagement because we didn't want to launch a product that was like, one use and that's it. We wanted to make sure that users come back so that they can actually set goals. So the re-engagement was really important. The other thing that we really wanted to make sure is that users are able to get tangible value from it, right? So that's the other metric that we're measuring. But we did have, in terms of like how we prioritized it, is that we had OKRs that we had defined as a business. And as long as all of our ideas laddered up to those OKRs, to those strategic imperatives, we knew that we were moving towards the right direction. Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
Tell me about your stakeholders from your project. How were they selected or who are
I'll give you an example for this one. Currently, I'm leading a vision exercise for, it's like a 8-week vision sprint. And we got approached by one of the managing directors of Mileage Plus. So one of my questions to her was, who are the primary stakeholders that I should be working with? They should be part of this workshop for the whole time. And my biggest thing is gonna be, I need them to commit and show up throughout this whole process. They can't be just show up and leave whenever they want to, right? So I worked with them to identify who are those people. And the other thing that we also did is identify who are the people that will help build it. From technology, from the marketing teams, from the co-brand teams. Are there any like third-party partners that we work with really closely that influence our product, right? So I was able to identify who are those stakeholders, but there's two sets of stakeholders. One is your core team that's gonna help you work together and shape it. And then there's like a slightly bigger team that you kind of need to work with when you're collaborating and co-creating, right? But you wanna work with a smaller team first and kind of like expand when needed. Because if it's too many people involved, it's not realistic, right? It's too many cooks in the kitchen. It becomes really, really hard to actually make decisions. That's why it's really important to have a core team and then the larger group that you're gonna be working with throughout the whole sprint. And also like a tiebreaker, right? You always need to have that one person that can help kind of just make the decisions when you get into the point where you're running into circles, so.
Building off that question, what would the ideal size of a core team be?
Core team, 5 to 6, and in terms of the entire sprint, I don't like going more than like 20 to 25 people, and I think that's, even then, that's quite a bit, so, yeah. Because you honestly, like, you wanna shape or create the team that's gonna be very productive, and it's gonna have a high level of engagement. So if you know that you have people that get stuck in cycles and can't really get past like the MVP in a near term and have a really hard time just thinking beyond their own roadmap, you might have to ask the question of like, is this the right person on a team? You are trying to think vision, so you're trying to have a combination of people that will help you build the product, who are really close and understand the problems you're trying to solve. They're experts. If you start with that, that's really good, and I wouldn't go more than 20 to 25 people. But the core team itself, 5 to 7.
How much of the vision did you build before bringing them together? Because in my thinking, a lot of people are shy and quiet, meet with them individually and have kind of a scaffold vision, and then create the talking points.
Vision was created with them. So there was never a point where design just went off on their own and just created a vision. No, every step of the way was collaboration, right? If we're talking about pain points, it's not design talking about the pain points, it's we're bringing in research and the stakeholders that are involved with the work to help us understand what are some of those pain points. Do we have research? Is there a knowledge gap, right? What are the things that we know and things that we don't know? So they are part of the whole process. You can't run a vision initiative if it's just on design. The vision has to come from the collective group. I think inherently designers, obviously, we can turn things into a high fidelity better, but one of my favorite things to do is get in a room where how might we statements are given to our partners, and we say, sketch, draw, right? Whether it's a storyboard, whether it's just your wireframing with them. But if you can create the culture throughout the whole process where you're co-creating together, that's what you want. Yeah.
How do you help lead in these scenarios without feeling like you are steering them towards a predetermined outcome?
Ooh, good question. Predetermined outcome. Like from the partner side or from the design side?
From either, because sometimes it feels like even though there is not necessarily a vision shouldn't be shaped in isolation,
Yeah.
but some things happened that has incited this initiative.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be, I feel, desired outcomes even before things have started moving or just not wanting to make sure everyone feels heard,
Yeah.
but maybe they have bad ideas and you need to steer the ship in a different direction, but you still want to make sure everyone feels heard and considered. So in those situations where things get a little bit more delicate, where it's not the clearest, everyone's on the same page, how do you make sure you're really still leading without just grabbing the reins from everyone else and pulling away?
Yeah, I think a few things that help is, one, kind of going back to the very first thing, grounding and aligning, right? Why are you doing this? What are the expectations? What does success look like? That kind of helps always to true back to that. It's like, hey, we're doing this because it's a long-term vision. We're doing this because we're trying to solve X, Y, Z in terms of the problems, right? So always truing back to that problem. I think it's also really important to identify what are the customer problems you're trying to solve first. And then identify where are the synergies between the customer problem and the business problem. Because if those two are not connected, you're not solving the right things, right? And also thinking about data and the research. If the only thing you go in there and you rely on is, analytical data, and you're not leveraging business data, customer data, you don't have the why, you just have a what, right? So leaning back on the research and the things that you know, kind of back to that grounding really helps. And you're right, there's always gonna be a ton of bad ideas. And that's okay. You want people to have the space to come up with ideas and not shy away from those bad ideas, because frankly, they don't know a bad idea is a bad idea. And also what your perception of a bad idea might actually be a really good idea to the customer. So not necessarily like giving up on things, but throwing back to, does this idea solve the pain point for the customer? Does it address the business need?
Yeah, I think there is to say, like bad ideas aren't a bad thing. There is something to say that's a success that you've created an environment
Yeah.
that people are willing to throw out
Yep.
any idea. Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it, just grounding back in the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, and I have had, like even on this project right now, we've had one of the leaders that said like, hey, can we focus on something very specific? And our answer was no, because that something specific is only one part of the opportunity, right? We identified many, so we're gonna do it for all of them. But I think where the compromise, and this is where you're always gonna have the push and pull, right? The compromise was, this is important to you, so when we're thinking about turning this into MVP, this is one of the things that we'll actually like consider into turning into an MVP. So there are ways for you to make sure that you're not compromising on the vision, because the whole point of the vision is you need to be led by the customer research, pain points, business needs, not internal politics. So, yeah.
I can imagine that, to follow on to that, the way that you handle kind of like wild cards or objections, that I found is a way that really opens up the space, because if you're really set on something and you just want to shut it down, people are going to feel that, and they're going to know, oh, that's not welcome here.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. So one, don't shut it out like that, right? If there are ideas that you're like, okay, this is clearly the wrong direction, it's okay to have a conversation with the leads, your stakeholders, like the person that engaged, who are you accountable with on this work, and in private say, hey, there's certain ideas that are gonna derail us from what we're trying to achieve. Can you help, right? So there are little politics, and this is where you have to be a communicator, right? You have to practice that. So instead of just saying, hey, those are horrible ideas and we're not gonna do it, you say, hey, we're gonna continue to explore this, but guess what? You are having conversation with your leaders, you're trying to make sure that it pivots. So you can do it gently, yeah. All right, thanks everyone.
Man, great job, David. I just loved how vision is not so much these hard skills of being a great designer, a great developer, a great product architect. It's, for me, very much like the soft skills of communication, collaboration, influence, inspiring others for a shared trajectory, a shared goal, shared vision. And so I think you did a great job. Thank you. All right, so I don't know what I did with my script, but we should be good. So I believe we now have another small group activity. So we broke the ice with our first little activity. Now we're going to do a quick little 15-minute activity. And so I figured with this one, what are a few hypothetical problems, if you will, scenarios in which our teams, our tables here that we are on, we could craft a shared vision for. And so for the next 15 minutes, we're going to be focused on collaborating on a shared vision for one of the problems. And so as you see here, next to the color coordinations is the scenario that we're going to be working with. And so for table green, losing things at home. I do that all the time. I would love a product for that. Please help. Yellow, forgetting passwords. Pink, feeling stressed while traveling. Red, managing personal finances. Orange, finding healthy meals during the workday. Purple, keeping up with learning or professional development. Now, these are very, in my opinion, kind of minute little scenarios, if you will. I blame ChatGPT for these suggestions, which they are AI generated. But I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to engage, connect, and kind of what sort of ideas can come from this. And so step one, based on the scenario, clearly articulate or define the problem in one sentence. Step two, create a product vision that would solve this problem. And then step three, identify the very first roadmap step that moves towards that vision. So we don't need to define the entire roadmap, the entirety of the plan, if you will, just maybe what are the few things to get this vision off the ground, if you will. And so one person from each group will then scan the QR code on the back of the lanyard, and then you will be directed to Slido, in which there is going to be a tab called, I believe it's polls, and there is going to be activity 2. So share your problem, your product vision, and your first roadmap. So document what's going on with your team here, what comes up, what's the problem, what's the vision, and what's the roadmap. And so for the next 15 minutes, let's dive into it and see what happens. So have at it. Time is up. We'll bring it back. I don't know about y'all, but I felt like we leaned into that a lot more than I was expecting. I mean, such simple little minute scenarios that led to a lot of in-depth conversation. I know with my group Green, we focused on the problem quite extensively, so that was quite inspiring for me. So if one person from each group could just submit a quick little synopsis through scanning the QR code, that would be great, and maybe we can converse about it later. But with that, we're now going to pivot to our next speaker. Chris is the CEO of ConnectSx, where he leads the development of enterprise solutions that transform healthcare logistics. He brings more than 20 years of experience in product strategy, innovation, and roadmap execution across startups and global enterprises. So with that, please join me in welcoming Chris.
All right. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Yeah, see some yawning. I was yawning, so if you fall asleep, I'm not going to call you out on it. Don't worry about it. So my name is Chris Riedel, as you heard. I'm the CEO of ConnectSx. It's very hard to say, which is why we changed the name of the product to Beacon so that I didn't have to keep saying ConnectSx all the time. So we're a SaaS platform that helps medical device companies manage their field logistics and sales, which probably means nothing to you guys. It's a pretty complicated problem. It's a pretty legacy industry, and we have to spend a lot of time socializing what we do with stakeholders inside our organization and outside with all of the customers that we work with. So I'm going to talk about the importance of effective roadmaps, at least from our perspective, especially when it comes to building some amazing products. But first, I'm a vision guy. Like, so this, I mean, I came to this sort of by default because, well, I'll explain a little bit how I came to this, but I have to deal with roadmaps a lot, right? But I'm a startup founder, so I think about the big pictures. I mean, we were talking about our idea at the table. You know, my idea would be, let's just get rid of passwords. How do we do that? Like, that's a stupid, crazy big idea. That's kind of that's where I live. Ever since I was a kid, and at 6 years old, I commandeered my parents' pantry for my office to build stuff. It's not like I was, selling Dunder Mifflin paper out of there. It's like rocket ships and race cars and, all the things that little kids love to do. But the one thing that I had to learn early on is that my ideas themselves, they're not worth anything, right? I mean, I know that everybody loves to fall in love with their ideas, but they're inherently valueless, right? And I know that I'm talking a little bit about ideas here. Ideas and vision are connected to each other. From my perspective, vision is a collection of ideas that we string together to tell a story, right? That's what vision is. It takes a lot of ideas to tell the story about what we believe the future state to be. For example, the idea of renting an air mattress renting an air mattress for the night to a complete stranger was the idea that led to the vision of Airbnb as, these are my words, the democratization of the hospitality industry, right? I mean, that's the vision. The idea was, I have an air mattress, there's a bunch of people coming to San Francisco, they need a place to stay, maybe we should rent it to them. Sounds crazy. I mean, sounds really crazy, honestly, but it worked. Same thing with the idea of digitizing all these audio files, right? And giving you a way to listen to them became the vision for the iPod, which became, your entire music library in your pocket. Those by themselves, though, and I may offend some people when I say this, but they're like crypto. They have zero intrinsic value. They just don't, because if you can't execute on those ideas, they're not worth anything, right? It takes translation, and by translation I mean, the how do we make this happen, and the action, right? So that's where people like us come into play. And before I go any further, I apologize in advance. You guys are gonna have to look at my face for a few minutes here in stereo. I'm gonna give you a little bit of context about me, right? So really quickly, 24 years ago, I was teaching high school. After a series of weird comic events, I bought a bunch of software, taught myself how to build websites, became a web developer. I mean, it's a common story, right? This is, my origin story. Became really interested in UX and UX design, and so spent a bunch of time doing interaction design. I think that you'll see why that's important shortly. Parlayed that into being a product owner and product architect, really focused on what are we building, how are we building it, why should we be building it that way. Startup founder, so I've founded 2 traditional startups. I've started multiple other companies. This gives me sort of a very unique lens when it comes to thinking about how we build products and how we actually roadmap building those products. And then executive, I have spent the better part of the past 15 years in executive roles. Obviously, my current role is CEO of the startup. I worked at the University of Chicago for 10 years and had a variety of senior level roles there. You get a pretty unique perspective, right, on how to build things. So why that matters, and this is why I love AI, as horrifying as AI can be to me, is all I have to do is give it a picture of myself and say, give me 4 different hats, and you guys are gonna see a photograph of me with 4 hats that I don't own. So, why does this matter? It matters because, like I said, each of these roles has given me a really unique perspective. As a UX designer, you're always focused on articulating and exposing what customers want and what they need. And I think the important distinction to make is those two things are rarely the same, right? Customer will tell you what they want, but what they need is something that they said in between the lines. It's very important for me to be continuously looking at how we're delivering value to our customers, right? And roadmaps are a way to do that. As a product owner and architect, I'm the one who's translating what we say we're gonna build. Can we actually build it? How long is it gonna take us to do that? Should we even do it, right? I think that those are questions that I ask. As a founder, I have to tell compelling stories all the time. We have to tell compelling stories to raise money. We have to tell stories to justify costs. We have to win customers. I'm always asking, how are we executing against the vision, right? Because we started the company with a vision. We have to ask ourselves, how are we executing against it? How are we telling that story? And of course, the always famous, what did I ship, right? That's a big one. And then as an executive, I have accountability for looking out multiple quarters down the road, right? So I have to be looking at what we're doing and why we're doing it from a long view, which is the visionary view, but also it is also the roadmap view, because the roadmaps are leading you to the vision, even if it's a vision you're not going to get to because it's over that bend in the horizon. I need to be looking at that. How are we creating business value? We need to be mapping what we're doing and how we're articulating what we're doing in roadmaps to business value and to the ROI, right? So that's sort of the way that I'm looking at this. I think the important thing, though, is that vision is sexy, and it's complicated, but it is sexy. But as sexy as it is, it doesn't just happen. You can dream up a rocket ship, but that rocket ship isn't going to build itself, right? So, turning vision into reality requires, like I said, translation. It requires people like everybody in this room to take a vision and to turn it into something that's understandable and relatable and actionable. And that's really, where roadmaps come in. We have to take those things, we have to shepherd them into execution. So that is what roadmaps are for. I personally view roadmaps as, at least in part, a way to transform ideas into reality. I think that is really important, right? They are, in a sense, blueprints for execution. I think there can be a lot of confusion, and I'll talk about this shortly. There can be a lot of confusion about, what a roadmap is or should be, how it should look, how it should operate. But really, if your roadmap is not helping you turn your vision into something real, then it's actually not an effective roadmap. Roadmaps are really here to create realities from ideas, right? Everybody in here know what a roadmap is, or at least conceptually know what a roadmap is, right? Anybody want to tell me what a roadmap is? Here, let me go back so that you're not cheating. Anybody want to share what their thoughts about a roadmap is? No? Say that? What's that?
Maybe I wasn't that experienced, I don't know.
Yep.
The concrete steps that we're describing.
Okay, that's good.
It's a visual representation of how we're going to achieve your product vision in terms of the capacity.
Okay, that's great. So, yeah, from my perspective, a roadmap, obviously, it takes the vision and it turns it into a plan for action, right? You're looking at what your product vision is and you're building something that you can act against. More importantly, and I think that this is maybe not focused on enough, is that a roadmap gives you a way to talk about the process for turning your vision into a real thing, right? Turning it into a product. and I'll talk more about this later, but I can't emphasize that enough, is that it's a communication tool. That's what a roadmap is. It is not a project tool. A lot of people, I think, miss that distinction because I think we're sort of trained to look at a roadmap as here are the steps along the thing that I'm doing, and I'm going to execute them. And then if anybody's done development, you guys all know what your Scrum board looks like, what your backlog looks like, what your tasks look like, right? Like we think about those things, but that's not what a roadmap really is, right? It is designed to help you, from my perspective, answer at least 3 questions. And those are, where are we going? Why are we going there? And how do we get there, right? And it's easy to miss that by just looking at the roadmap because the first thing that we focus on is the tasks that we say we're going to do. But this is a great example. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the GitHub public roadmap, but it's great. The reason that I like it is it exposes things like areas of focus. I know that this image is cut off a little bit, right? But areas of focus. So these are where they're focusing, and you can click on them, and they will show you in a pretty generic time format what they intend to do. And then you can click on these things. And by generic time format, I mean that these are quarter-based, right? And you can do multiple different ways of doing your roadmaps. You can do, now, next, later. You can do quarters. There are some things that we've done in years because I think to David's point, sometimes, it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years to get a vision actually implemented, right? But you can click on these things and then you can see the value proposition, why we're doing this, which is great for business owners because it ties back to the business value. And then the expected outcome, what we think success is going to look like, right? So this is there's other good examples out there, but this is one that I like. What a roadmap is, and I've already talked about this a little bit, I'm not going to belabor the point. It's not your feature list, right? It is not your product backlog. It is not a set of discrete time-bound tasks, like we're going to get this done by January 15th. That's not your roadmap, right? It should not be hyper-focused, and it absolutely should not be inflexible. There's going to be a lot of artifacts that support your roadmap, but those are not your roadmap. And so I think making that distinction and understanding that distinction, at least for me, is pretty key. This is our Jira board. This is not a roadmap. This is, there's a ton of tasks in here and there's a bunch of things going on. And it would be easy to look at that and go, okay, well, I can see where these guys are going, but you can really only see where we're going in a 6-week time frame because that's it. Like we do a 6-week sprint and then we blow this thing away and we start all over again. So it's important, at least for me, to not conflate those things. The overriding purpose, as I just said, I'm going to repeat myself because I think it's important, of a roadmap is communication, excitement, and alignment. And I believe it's those things in that order, right? So above all else, they're communications tools, and they help you tell the story of the product vision in a way that your audience can understand it, right? So you're communicating. Why is that important? Because you want to generate excitement for what you're doing. You want to generate excitement for the vision that you're building towards. And the best way to do that is to communicate effectively about it. And what that does then is it helps you build alignment from your stakeholder communities. And I think that a really important thing to sort of call back to or articulate is I represent 4 stakeholder communities, but there are multiple other stakeholder communities, right? Your roadmap is not just for your dev team and your design team and your business team. It's your sales folks are engaged, your customer support, your customer success folks are engaged, your marketing team is engaged, your customers are engaged, your partners are engaged. There's all different people that are your stakeholders in your roadmap, and you need to make sure that you've got alignment with all of the ones that are the most critical, right, to success when it comes to implementing either a product or a component of a product, right? So the job of a roadmap, because it's a communications tool, is to tell a story, right? And the purpose for telling that story, again, is to build alignment around the thing that we're building. The audience is going to vary, but the job that you're doing with your roadmap is not going to vary. It is there for you to tell a story, right? The roadmap should be able to educate the business owner. So they should be able to walk away saying, oh, I get it. This is how the product evolution embodies the product and company vision, right? It should help your teams to compel customers. So if you've got sales folks or you got marketing folks, right, they should be able to give your customers a sense of, you know, this is where we're headed, the speed that we're going, and that's why you should work with us. This is what's on our roadmap, and this is why you should care. Because nobody else is doing this, because we know you need this, because this solves your problem. You need to convince stakeholders, right? This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why it's meaningful. This is why it's valuable. This is why it's worthwhile. And again, those stakeholders are going to be internal and external. Convincing your dev team why they need to do this is going to be different than convincing your sales team this is why you need to do this, right? Because the dev team is probably going to want to work on technical debt. And the sales team is going to say, no, 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 I want 45 new features and I need to have them, you know, shipped by Q1 of 2026. It also is a way for you to empower those teams, right? So a team should be able to look at a roadmap and say to themselves, like, this is how I plug in. This is how I connect to the vision. This is how the work that I do drives what we're doing forward. And so when you're thinking about road mapping, you need to think about, how do I communicate what we're doing in a way that are going to meet each of these individual needs and goals? We both have inverted pyramids. I noticed that when David was up here, and I was like, oh shit, he took my thunder here. The way that I think about this, I mean, I do think about this as sort of an inverted pyramid. The roadmap is at the top, right? The roadmap, I mean, the vision is like, okay, so the vision is the stuff above the top, right? It's a little ether. But the roadmap is really at the top, just below the product vision. And then below that are the more tactical artifacts like feature list, backlog, you know, so forth. The things that are going to really engage the teams that are doing the work to build the product. I believe you need to start broad when you're defining themes or outcomes. You need to make sure that you're broad enough so that you can be flexible in the things that you put into it, but narrow enough that you make sure you are aligning with the needs of your customer. You know, you need to have more than one version of your roadmap. I'm just going to call that out. Roadmap is not one thing that you build and then you put it in a Google Drive folder somewhere and you give people a link to it and you expect that you're done. It's a communication tool like any other communication tool. So you're going to need to have roadmaps that speak directly to the audiences that you're talking with, right? You can't tell something different, though. It's still one roadmap. The narrative is going to change depending on who you're talking to, but if the content changes, you're not going to be able to build alignment because you're going to be telling different people different stories, right? And that's going to create problems. So this is, in our case, I mean, I'm just going to show an example, right? So we've got roadmaps that look like the GitHub roadmap, but we built a slide deck version of the roadmap for a roadshow, right? So now we've got a product and we've got a product vision, but then we also have components of the product, and this is particularly related to the AI work that we have been doing. And so, you know, we took it to customers, we took it to prospects, we took it to potential investors, our internal board, and the idea was to communicate in a non-technical way, right? How AI initiatives that we're doing are specifically going to shape the platform and how they're going to deliver value. So everything tied back to the more focused product roadmap, but it told in a narrative fashion to help sort of keep excitement without creating confusion. You don't want to get technical with a bunch of folks that aren't technical because they're going to go, I don't really understand, what are you doing, how is this going to work? So just keep that in mind when you're creating roadmaps. You need to think about who the audience is, and then you need to have an artifact for that audience. It doesn't need to be, shouldn't be different. It shouldn't be telling a different story, but it should be designed for the people that you're going to be talking to. So one of the most important components from our perspective in effective roadmaps are the feedback loops that you build, right? You've got to build feedback loops to ensure that the roadmap continues to be aligned with the vision and clear for all stakeholders. I think that this can't be stressed enough. A roadmap is a living document. It is not something that you put on the shelf. It's not something that you fill with a bunch of features and then you say, okay, great, we're going to build them until the tickets are all gone and then we're going to start all over again. That is absolutely not how a roadmap works, right? Some ways to get customer feedback or ways to get feedback would be, you know, road shows for customers. So you can take your roadmap out and talk to who are the customers that you have, who are the prospects that you have, who are the partners, you have channel partners, who are the partners that you have. Show them your roadmap, get feedback from them, and then use that feedback to inform the way you evolve the roadmap, quarterly roadmap reviews. I don't know if anybody does this, but I mean, you guys really should, we should all be looking at our roadmaps. Personally, I look at it more than every quarter because we build so fast. We really kind of need to, and honestly, even though our industry is legacy, it changes pretty quickly. The things that people are willing to do change pretty quickly. So we have to continuously reevaluate, is the roadmap that we have actually meeting the needs of the customers that we're talking to? Public roadmaps are another cool thing, I think. I mean, we have a public roadmap. We don't post it on the website, but we provide it to anybody that asks for it because I just think it's good, even if there's people that are thinking about working with you, it's good to show them how you think about what you do, because that's what a roadmap does. It shows people not just what you're gonna do, it shows them how you think about what you're going to do. And it helps them, it gives them, I think, a little bit more comfort level plugging in with you, right? Especially from a prospect side. I mean, I'll just put my business hat on, and when I go to sell to people, I want them to understand what the longevity of the product looks like. I want them to understand the way we think about customer needs because they're paying us money. And so I want them to have sort of a vision and a view of that. The other thing that I'll say is really important is you need to have regular, our perspective, you need to have regular cross-functional team meetings. You need to align your roadmaps with all of your teams on a regular basis because they need to be aware of not only what you're doing, but you need to be aware of what they're hearing. Because you're gonna have other teams that are hearing things from other people that you will never have access to, right? Your marketing team is gonna know stuff you'll never know. Your sales team is gonna know stuff you'll never know. And your dev team needs to tell them things that they're gonna just assume aren't true unless they have communication with each other, right? So you have to put your roadmap up on the board and say, let's talk about these things. Let's make sure the themes are still relevant. Let's make sure that the work we're doing is still relevant. And if it's not, let's change it. One thing that we think a lot about when we're trying to figure out what to build and what to put on the roadmap is, so who cares, right? Like we're making, I think David said it, we're making hypotheses, right? When we're talking about what we're building, we're hypothesizing about things we think we need to build. And we're doing it because we're getting in data from different data points. That doesn't mean, though, that we actually need to build stuff just because people are telling us that we do. So we need to see if the things that we're putting on the roadmap pass the, pardon my language, but what I like to call the who gives a shit test, right? Here's the thing I'm gonna put on the roadmap. Well, who gives a shit? Who told you that they needed that? Why did they tell you that they needed it? Have we validated it with other people? Is it really a problem, or is it an issue that this individual has because they haven't figured out how to change their process, right? Like, though everything that goes on the roadmap has to pass this test for me. And if it doesn't pass the test, now I will make a little caveat. There is a little caveat when you're a startup and you're trying to get customers. You will put more crap inside your application to win a customer than you would ever care to admit that you will. And so another reason to do this is, number one, to just try to not get yourself in it, or at least go in it with eyes wide open. We're about to build some shit that nobody cares about, except one guy, but the one guy's gonna give us 50 grand a month, so great, we'll do it, right? But you also want to catalog that stuff because a big component of roadmaps is making sure you're managing your application appropriately. Technical debt is a huge, I mean, that's not really part of this slide, but it's something that I am passionate about. Your roadmap should include getting rid of technical debt because that is a value add that no customer is going to acknowledge, but that every company will tell you is going to save you mountains of money and heartache in the long run, right? So anyway, back to the deck. I think what's really important to ask, it's sort of in the context of this who gives a shit, is what we're about to build, does it move the needle, right? Do the things that we're talking about, whether it's a specific feature or whether it is a theme of features that you're trying to sort of, a suite that you're trying to put out, does it move the needle? Who's it move the needle for? Does it move the needle for the business? Does it move the needle for the customer? Does it move the needle for the product? And how does it move that needle? You need to answer those questions. And if you can't answer those questions, then whatever you have doesn't belong on the roadmap. It might not even belong in the backlog. I mean, I always say is like, if you can't prove that it's valuable, kill it. But if you can't stand to kill it, shove it in the backlog until it's proved itself. And we've got a pretty big backlog with a bunch of stuff that my guess is isn't going to prove itself. And so every 3 months we go through and we prune the backlog and we just delete stuff, right? Because otherwise you're going to get confused about what is actually valuable and what is just stuff that you talked about in the past and think, oh, maybe this is something we should build. It's only going to take the developer a day. Great. Well, that's a terrible reason to build something, just because it's going to take the developer a day. It needs to be built because it moves the needle. And if it doesn't move the needle, I don't care if it takes 2 hours, I don't care if it takes 15 minutes. You just don't do it, because all of that time in aggregate adds up to really meaningful features. And if we spend our time wasting pennies because we think that it's, it's going to put something in the app, you're going to wind up paying for it in the long run.
Also, it creates tech debt.
100% creates tech debt, right? Because eventually you're going to have to rip those features out, right? I mean, we've done that where you build stuff and you're like, why the hell did this make its way in here? And now we have to explain to customers why other important features are going to get kicked down the road because we're busy pulling stuff out of the application, right? All right. So obviously, every roadmap is trying to tell you something. I mean, it's a communications tool, so every roadmap is trying to tell you something. Primarily what it's trying to tell you, though, is it's telling you what we're doing, right? The question is, how do we know we did it? How do we know how well we did it? And the only way we can know that is by measuring things. So like any strategic process, metrics are the key. And when it comes to roadmaps, I think big question is, what are you measuring and how are you measuring it? And the obvious sort of answer for people is, features shipped, right? Or let's measure the features shipped. Or, outcomes achieved, that's one that I like, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Value delivered. But how do you do that? How do you figure out what you're measuring? How do you measure it? And then how do you get the answers that you need? So, for us, it's outcome over outputs, right? So outputs are what you ship. Outcomes are what happened because you shipped. Don't get stuck in the mess of, I am going to track how many tickets I resolved, right? Or how many issues I closed, or how many features I put in this one part of the application. That's a fool's errand, and it doesn't provide you anything valuable, right? For most businesses, outcome is the goal, and the outputs are just hypotheses about how to get there. So we need to understand, did we get to the goal? So some questions that you can ask, and I think that you should ask yourself are, how are you defining the outcomes or the objectives for the items on your roadmap? Items on your roadmap aren't just items that say, we're going to build something that solves this problem or this, theme of problems. How are we going to tell if we actually did that? How are we going to track that? And this is also important. Who are you involving? Right? Who are you involving in the conversation about how you're actually going to determine whether or not you got the outcome you wanted? Because if you leave it up to the engineering team, they're just going to talk amongst themselves. That's all that they're going to, and no offense to the engineers, right? But I've worked around engineers for 25 years. So they're going to come up with an answer, and they're going to have a reason why it's a valid answer. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be 100% of the picture. It's just not going to be. So you need to define, when you're road mapping and when you're figuring out what are we going to do and how are we going to determine if we were successful, you need to include other people. You need to include, I'll say it again, customer success. You need to include sales. You need to include marketing. You need to include partners. You need to include existing customers, past customers if you have them. Include anybody you can to figure out how you should identify whether or not these things are successful, right? Because that's going to make or break whether or not you get the data that you need. This is another one. Who's informing what these key results look like? And that's not necessarily the same people, right? You need to talk to people about what does the success look like, but then where are you getting that data from and who is informing how that data is interpreted? You have to define those people. I don't necessarily have the answers for your organizations, but that is a question that I feel like you really need to make sure that you're asking. And are you building ways to collect data that can tell you if you're getting that outcome? It's not just always going to be about conversations, right? We had a tool that we used, Pendo, I think it was. Pretty cool tool. Shows you what people are using in the app, right? That's a great way to collect data. NPS is a great way to collect data. But not just one way to collect data. You got to collect the data. You got to find lots of ways to collect data, get creative about it, and then make sure that you're engaging as many people as you can. Impact is another big thing, right, that we think about when we talk about what goes on the roadmap. So, you know, the roadmap should span functional areas of your business, and, you know, you're going to add items to the roadmap that are tied to the larger vision in the product, and, you know, that vision should be baked into the goals of the company, right? So basically what you're doing is looking for things that drive the business forward are the things that create impact. You want to figure out how do you find those things. So, you know, for example, I'll just give you some examples of what that might look like is, you know, is your roadmap driving retention? Everybody who's got an application wants retention, right? I mean, we don't have apps that it's like, hey, log in one time, give me $1 million bucks, and then you can log out again, right? I mean, it's like, that's not how it works. So are you driving retention? Is your roadmap adding new revenue? You need to talk to the business people about this, but is it adding revenue? Are the things that you're building actually compelling customers to work with you, right? There's ways to ask those questions. There's people who can ask those questions for you. It's not just about did revenue grow? Because if revenue grew, doesn't necessarily mean that it grew because of your roadmap, right? It might have grown in spite of your roadmap. You kind of want to know that. Are you capturing new customers? I mean, that's growing new revenue, but it's really not, because it's not only because you can have expansion revenue, right? You can have revenue can be sort of a false flag. You can have revenue grow because customers have added more licenses, but nobody new's coming in the door. And the people that added new licenses is because they have a 3-year contract with you, and what else are they going to do, right? So you need to figure out, are we actually having an impact? Here's another one that I think is a really important question to ask that a lot of people don't think about is, are you burning out your team? Right? What's your roadmap look like, and what does the impact your roadmap have? What impact is your roadmap having on your team? Your roadmap can actually tell you if you're burning out your team, because if you look at it and you see just a ton of shit on there, I'm telling you right now, there's a 95% chance you're burning out your team, and you're also probably diluting your product. So you should be looking at how do we have an efficient, effective, streamlined roadmap that creates value, doesn't add junk, and doesn't burn out the team. Right? Another thing that we like to ask a lot about the roadmap is, are we doing things that simplify the sales process? And what I mean is, we're not building stuff for our sales guys. We're building stuff that makes no be the dumb answer from a customer, right? Are we building things that almost makes the sales guy obsolete? If we are, it's because we're listening to the customer, we're taking the feedback, we're turning it into really effective solutions, and we're implementing them in the application. And then when that gets shown to them, they're like, this is amazing, right? So that's a good question. Are you making your sales team's life easier, or are you making it harder? Because now, I can't tell you how many times they get on a phone call with somebody about Salesforce, and they're like, oh my God, I mean, there's like 7,000 menus in here, and I don't even know how to, would hate to be a sales guy, right, that has to convince them, oh, but no, this is wonderful, we can build it, it can make whatever you want, you know, right? Like, that's not, that's a real thing, right? Are you making your sales team's life easier, or are you making it harder? And then, are you improving the customer experience? Like, that's sort of the brass tacks, right? Is your roadmap making your customer's experience better? If it is, you're doing a great job. If it's not, you got a little bit of work to do. I think about roadmaps as bets and not promises, right? You're making informed bets on what's going to create business value based on what you understand about the vision and what you understand about your customer and what you understand about your market, right? You're betting on stuff. I mean, that's what we're doing. How many people here have implemented a feature that never gets used? I mean, I'll raise both my hands because I've implemented a ton of features that have never gotten used before, right? We're making bets, and sometimes we're going to be wrong, and that's okay. We just need to understand that that's what a roadmap is, because a roadmap is a communication tool. We have to communicate that. We have to communicate to people what a roadmap is actually for, right? And so it takes consistent alignment with your team. You've got to make sure that you have continuous engagement with everybody involved so that they understand how the roadmap is evolving. The wins that you're making, if you have hiccups along the way, they need to understand that. And a part of the reason why is, if you get this right, when stakeholders want to know, or they want to hold you accountable, let's say, for something that you didn't do that was in the roadmap, you need to be able to explain to them that, you know, it didn't align with the vision. It wasn't going to create value. It was no longer relevant to the market. Like, if you're having these conversations, that's a pretty easy conversation to have. It's like, listen, I understand that the thing that you wanted that was in the roadmap, it didn't get built and it's not going to get built, and here's why. This is how we manage our roadmap. This is the decision that we came to, and that's, unfortunately for you, that's the outcome. We're not going to release this feature, right? I mean, how many people in here use Atlassian? Jira, whatever, Confluence, right? You guys ever look at their feature request list? It's like a gazillion tickets long. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I 100% guarantee you, if you've ever had a moment where you said, damn it, why don't they just have this one thing? Go to their list and search for that one thing that you want. 99.99%, it's there. And they're not gonna release it. They're not gonna build it. They're not gonna do anything with it, right? Because they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know what their app does. They know what their platform is for. They know what the product is for. And they have a roadmap that matches to it. They built a feedback mechanism, which is tell us what you want, but they're clear, just because you said you want it, doesn't mean we're gonna build it, right? So, you know, I came up with just a few questions I think that are helpful to ask yourself, right? I mean, I'm not gonna make any assumptions. I'm just gonna, you guys can read these, but I'm gonna tell you what the questions are, right? So, should certainly be asking yourself, do we have a roadmap? Do we have a roadmap, and is the roadmap current? And if you don't, and you are a product person, you should have a roadmap. You just should, because otherwise you're gonna have some nasty, gnarly, gangly thing get built up that you're gonna have technical debt that you're gonna have to figure out how to strip out, right? Does the roadmap, if you have one, pass the who gives a shit test? Everything on it. Or if, like I said, if it doesn't, is there a justifiable reason, and we could all make arguments about whether or not customer revenue is a justifiable reason to build some shit that only 2 people are gonna use, but it should have a reason if it doesn't pass that test, right? And if it doesn't, well, then you need to reconsider it, you need to restructure what you're building, or you need to just kill it. Second sort of set of questions, do you do cross-functional reviews of your roadmap? I've talked about this, but this is critical. I mean, it's not just one team that cares about the roadmap, it is the entire business. The entire business, I personally want 4 or 5 versions of the roadmap to answer the questions that I have to answer on a regular basis, right? So are you doing cross-functional reviews to make sure that it's in alignment? It doesn't mean that everyone's gonna go, oh my God, this is great. You're probably gonna have a lot of people go, this is bullshit, you shouldn't do this, or don't do this thing. You're gonna have to make those decisions, but you want them to have the ability to be heard. You want them to have the ability to sort of have their day in court and have the conversation with you and make the argument why something does or doesn't make sense for being on the roadmap, because then that gives you credibility in the long run, right? How often do you do them? I mean, that's another question. We did it one time. Well, okay, you did it one time, great. We should be doing these regularly. Quarterly is the typical cadence, but it depends. Again, it depends on how fast your company moves. If you're moving really fast, you may need to do it more than that. You may need to do it every 6 weeks, every 2 months. You know, I don't know, shit, you may want to do it every 2 weeks. It just depends, right? It depends on your business, but it needs to be regular, and once a year is not regular. I'm sorry, but even in an enterprise, customer needs move way too quick. Once a year is not regular enough. If you don't, I think you need to obviously do these, and you need to work to get alignment with everyone so that everyone is on the same page about what the roadmap is, what the roadmap does, what it's for, what it says, why it says that. That's not like a 30-minute meeting. You're not gonna solve the alignment issue you're not gonna solve it in one meeting. Period. Doesn't matter how long the meeting is, you're not gonna solve that issue. You have to socialize this. Again, this is a communications tool. You have to socialize what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you need to do it regularly in formal and informal settings, because you need to get everybody to be marching in the same direction, even if they're kind of veering off the edges, right? It's really critical to do that. And then, you know, the last one is, I don't know if, you know, anybody, I'm sure everybody's got some sense of what OKRs and KPIs are, right? But you need to be thoughtful about what objectives and key results and what key performance indicators you're actually tracking and why. And are you? And if you're not, then you need to start. Or you may not be articulating them as such. You may be articulating them as something else, but you need to be clear with everybody about what it is that you're tracking, what those things are. Everyone is tracking some kind of KPI, right? North Star metric, it's the best KPI to track if you can narrow it down to one thing, right? But there's going to be other KPIs you're tracking. You need to be clear about what those are and how they map to your roadmap, right? How those things actually inform and influence the roadmap that you have. And then this is another big one is whose job is it to make sure that that's happening, right? Who's responsible? Who's responsible for tracking the metrics? Because if no one is responsible, no one's going to do it. And if everyone's responsible, no one's going to do it. There needs to be a responsibility that is put on someone that this is what you have to do, this is your job, and they have to do it and they have to report back. I feel like that's a non-negotiable, because when an executive comes in the room and they're like, great, what about this? Someone needs to be able to answer that question. And you don't want to be in a position where like, oh shit, not only do I not know the answer, I'm not 100% sure I can give you the answer to the question you just asked, right? That nobody wants to be there. And then, finally, how do you socialize and use those results to inform your roadmap? Because again, this is iterative process. This is continuous improvement of your roadmap, and it only does that through getting the feedback, tracking the metrics, and then putting it back in the roadmap. Because again, not to beat a dead horse, you're using this to communicate with all of your stakeholders. It is one of the more critical artifacts I think that you have, right? I think a roadmap is maybe less important to the dev team than a backlog, but it's more important than a backlog or a feature list to anybody else in the company, because most people aren't even going to understand what's on those feature lists or backlogs. They're not going to understand the issues. They're not going to understand what you're doing. They will understand the roadmap. If you're doing it right, they're going to understand it. All right, that's it for me. Sorry, I think I went over time, but hopefully it wasn't too boring. I'm surprised. I feel like I used up all the words. I'm surprised there's any questions left.
Could you share more of how you address technical debt in your roadmap?
Yeah, so, well, I can tell you how we do it specifically. So specifically, we have a sprint every quarter where we just address technical debt. And so it is a strategic component of the roadmap that is really focused on hardening the infrastructure, improving the user experience, because a lot of times technical debt ends up giving you a bad user experience, right? So we align it to the things that it's going to impact, and that's one of them. I came from a place where technical debt was rampant. I mean, it took them 40 years to update a financial system. So you can only imagine what it took to keep that thing running. So when I started the company, I was like, we're never doing that. We're never doing that. Things are going to be upgraded. And so we build it in and we sell it to customers as, this is for your benefit. We are going to improve performance. We're going to improve security. We're going to reduce risk. We're going to improve your experience. So that for us, I mean, I hope that answers the question, but for us, that's how we integrate that into the roadmap, is that this really is for the customer.
You said a sprint every month?
No, we do one every quarter. This next year, we're going to do one every 6 months, just because, I mean, we deal with our technical debt. So, but technical debt, I will say too, for us, we kind of lump in there if there's framework upgrades that have to happen, or if there, anything that we have to do to prevent technical debt from arising, that also gets included in those sprints.
Anybody else?
Thanks. What kind of questions might you ask an outsider for when you're asking for roadmap feedback?
Can you get a little more specific on which outsider you might be talking about, or just anybody?
I guess anybody outside of like the core team when you're getting feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we take our roadmap to our customers who are outsiders, right? And so we ask things like, before we even show them the roadmap, we try to have questions around, what are the biggest challenges you're facing right now, right? What are the things, what are the headwinds that you see in the market? What are the ways that solutions like ours will help with businesses like yours, right? Because what we're trying to do there is if we did our job right, we already know some of those answers. And so what we're trying to do is like the little magic trick, we're like, ta-da! So we have the conversation and then we put the roadmap in front of them and we say, well, let's talk about the things that we have on the roadmap. I heard from you, this thing is really important. It's actually in Q3, but, right, if it's a prospect or if it's somebody who's paying me a lot of money, I can say, it's in Q3, but I could move it to Q2 because it's already a part of the roadmap. And if there are things that they're asking for that aren't a part of the roadmap, we make very sure that we're clear on, we don't have it on the roadmap, sounds like a really great thing, we want to validate it, and when we do add it, we're going to come back to you and tell you. So in terms of what we ask them in getting feedback, it's what are the problems that you're having, the issues that you're having, but then once we show them the roadmap, it's really about how can you see what's on here benefiting your company or not? And that's the other thing too that we say to people all the time is, if you see things that we're doing that you think are bad, we want you to tell us what, and we want you to tell us why. And I want you to give me specific examples because, this is our line to our customers, is 75% of the things that get built come from customer feedback. 75% of the things that don't get built come from customer feedback, right? So their voice is very important. There's 25% of the stuff that we just ignore from them, right? I mean, I will say that. Like, there's 25% of the things that we build, even though they said don't, and 25% of the things that we don't build, even though they said do. But we try to make sure that we sort of engage them in the process, and it's really around how do you think this is going to drive value? How does what you see on here map to what you need or what you think you need? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing this. I feel like my face is inside roadmaps at least like once every couple of weeks, and
Right.
I learned a lot from this, so this was
good.
super, super helpful. Thank you. Question around the fidelity and the level of zoom for an effective roadmap. The reason why I ask is there were times where, let's say if I've joined an organization or worked with PMs, I feel like there's always like two sets of roadmaps. A roadmap that the leadership expects and then the roadmap that the teams are actually executing. How do you make sure you have the right level of fidelity so that there is that, to your point, communication tool, right?
Right.
Make
right.
sure that it's seamless, synchronized, one instead of just like multiple.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think that is tricky because I think that depending on who the audience is, so let's say a board, the level of fidelity of the roadmap really needs to be higher because number one, they're going to get bored and lose interest and not care, and then they're not going to hear the story that you're telling. I think that the most critical thing is making sure that the teams, including the board or the people that you're talking to, all align on what's the level of fidelity of the roadmap that you expect to see. And then you need to make sure that when you build out that version of the roadmap, it does not dilute or ignore or fail to reflect the essence of the things that are in the more sort of granular, right? A board may not want to see the work that you're doing to simplify, like one thing that we have is remove clicks, right? It's always about removing clicks. How do we remove 25% of the clicks in every single workflow, right? They may not care about that, but what they do care about is improve user experience, and then we can talk to them when they want to know, what does that mean? We're talking about that, right? So we're sort of talking through the thread down to the granular stuff when they want it. I have had less than positive experiences when you try to give a single roadmap to the wrong, like we've got one roadmap and that's it, and I give it to the wrong audience, right? Like you look at that GitHub roadmap is not built for a board. I mean, that's built for people that are using GitHub, right? Like it's, giving something like that to a board of directors or to a chief executive when all they're really trying to do is answer a very high level question and now they've got 45 things in front of them, they got to figure out how the hell do I make any sense of this? That actually can serve to hurt your credibility because you didn't, number one, and I'm just sort of speak from the executive perspective, you didn't take the time to understand what is it the executive actually needs. Again, you need to be very careful, and I feel very strongly about this. It's always one roadmap. It's one roadmap, but it's different versions and different narratives of the roadmap based on who you're showing it to, right? So, I mean, I think of it a lot like, oh, I mean, you can think of it like, you know, like Jira issue cards, right? It's like, there's the expanded view and there's the collapsed view, right? I just need to know the number and the title of the ticket. That's all I need to know. And there's a lot of people at certain levels, even customers, right? They don't need that information, number one, because they wouldn't understand it. Number two, it wouldn't mean anything to them, right? They need something else, but we also need to not lie to them. So let's make sure that it is 100% aligned to what the sort of formal roadmap actually is. Does that help?
Yeah. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Okay, one more question.
Man, you guys are great. I'm shocked. I didn't think that
Sorry,
anybody would
I got
care.
a lot of questions, apparently. Building off that a little bit, this is a little bit more granular maybe, but since you're making so many versions, what is your method, or how do you approach version control? Do you have one roadmap that you hold the keys to that is your source of truth? Since it is a living, breathing document, I just know the V1, V2, most recent, final.
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage that just on your side, on the team that is actually building it?
Yeah, so I guess that's an excellent question. And the way that I'll answer it is, there really is, as I said, there really is one roadmap, right? There is a canonical roadmap, and that is the roadmap that your teams build against. It's the roadmap that most of your internal teams actually care about and actually will be looking at, right? So that's the one you use. And then you really have to delegate responsibility to the person who is going to be creating a narrative, let's just call it a marketing piece from the roadmap, right? This is our version of the roadmap that I'm going to share to you because you're not going to understand the real roadmap, right? Someone has to own that. And then when the roadmap is updated, I mean, a part of that person's process, it's easy for us because, like, I'm the guy. So I know when the roadmap was updated. But a part of that process is going to be that person has to know when the roadmap has changed, if there was a material change that they have to change their document. But if you're doing your job and you're having all of your conversations and you've got your feedback loops going, they'll know that anyway, right? They're going to know that it's changed. But yeah, the whole V1, V2, I've got 5 folders with 10 Excel spreadsheets. Like, that's not helpful for anybody, right? Having an online tool where you can create the roadmap and you can post it internally and have it and update it and people can see it live, anything like that is, we use Jira's got a road mapping feature, and so we do use that. That's really easy. And then that way, like, I know when it's been updated. It's helpful if somebody who's updated it says to me, hey, we changed this one thing, you should be aware, because the roadmap can get kind of unwieldy, right? So me trying to pick through what got changed, I mean, they don't want to piss me off either, right? So, but yeah, you need to communicate. But yeah, to your point, you don't want multiple versions of it. You want the one roadmap, and then you have these artifacts that you use as sort of proxies, if you will, to the roadmap.
Marketing materials for your roadmap.
Exactly. And they get talked about as the roadmap, right? This is the roadmap. Like the PowerPoint the slide deck that I showed, right? That was actually a zoomed in portion of the roadmap. Wasn't the full roadmap, but the people that I was showing it to, they didn't need it, right? Is that helpful?
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, guys.
I mean, the thing that I love so much about the topic here tonight, from product vision to roadmap planning, is that even if I find myself not in a position of leadership, I can still have these conversations. I can still ask questions about, oh, what is the vision behind this? Who is it for? When is this happening? What does the roadmap look like? And start asking these questions, which might lead to a seat at the table to eventually get in that position if I find myself wanting to go in that direction. So, but this was excellent here tonight. I loved it. All right, and so a few things to wrap it up here. I don't know where my script is, but we'll just wing it. I know one shout out was for Invisia. So the free 1-hour workshop, they are offering some rapid prototyping. So if you have a problem and you want to work through a conceptual idea, may it be relating to that vision, or you want to work through a roadmap on certain, whatever problem that you might have going on, they're there to assist. So scan the QR code, request the free hour webinar workshop. And then I think, Peter, you want to come on up and give a few words for ID one more time?
An excellent presentation. In our roadmap, it's all about the future. We're trying to be positive about the future. And the Institute, and in the future, we're trying to build new value, novel value. And that's what we do at the Institute of Design. And if you're interested in partnering with us, attending classes, workshops, there's materials out there, feel free to grab that. But, when it comes down to it, getting to that future, moving from what is to what could or what should be, you really need 4 things. You need intent. We talked about that. We heard a lot about having purpose, values, principles. You need insight. You need to have some understanding that is going to help you frame those beautiful questions. E. Cummings once said, always the more beautiful answer to who asks the more beautiful questions. Bring that into your ideation. Understand where you're trying to get to, and then you come down to implement. Do it in a structured way, learning the methodologies. I love the presentation. David, and we're all about methods. A lot of the methods you had there, some of them had their starting here. Vijay Kumar wrote 101 design methods book. If you're interested in having process to build new value, check out how you can partner with the Institute of Design. Easiest way to do that, go to our LinkedIn page, check out our website. My name's Peter Zaff, ZAPF. Just remember Zaff Dingbats. You can find that at Illinois Tech, and reach out to me or just give me a business card and I'll follow up. But thank you again. I really think the Delivery Fellowship, I hope you make this your new home. Come back here. This would be a wonderful thing to continue. Again, thank you, all right?
So with that, old saying goes, you don't have to go home, but you just can't stay here. But we're going to be wrapping it up. So I'm glad everyone was here. Thank you so much for being a part of this event here tonight. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you again, everyone that's attended here tonight. And lastly, there is another poll. So on the QR code, if you scan it, go to polls. There's a third activity. It's not really an activity, but just looking for feedback. What are your thoughts on the event tonight, the format, the topic, just anything. We're looking for just any sort of feedback would be greatly appreciated. So with that, thank you all so much for tonight, and hopefully we'll be looking forward to you at the next event. So thank you, everyone.